made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes and to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Transact Card, Align Life, Neuro Infinity, Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, and the IFCO. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 523 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Sarah Farrant. And if you want to hear the story about the future of chiropractic and the term health expressions, stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. Today it is episode 523. And I have Dr. Sarah Farrant on with me today, coming from New Zealand, correct?
That's right.
An Aussie in New Zealand.
Yes.
And I'm going to just read off something from her bio that I felt was super profound, and excuse the moment, but then I'll get in and I'll give the introduction of why we do what we do over here at Chiro Hustle. And a unique perspective here is, in a world where mediocrity, collective ignorance, apathy, medical propaganda, and misinformation is the norm, there is a need for the likes of Dr. Sarah. We would do well to listen to her unique and compelling views on how we can influence generational change in health globally. I think it's profound, and that's why I get everybody to give me a quick bio on themselves so I can start to understand who they are. Dr. Sarah also studied at Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa, my hometown, which a lot of you that watch and listen to our podcast know that. And it's just quite compelling. We're going to talk about some things she's done to write some books and some things about her career and how her husband became a chiropractor on the journey with her. But before we get there, the big why. Why do we do what we do over here at Chiro Hustle? Well, first things first is freedom of speech, First Amendment. We never censored anyone. I think that that's something so valuable, because censorship and banning of people and suppressing of truth and information is really an issue in the culture where we are today. It's global. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that we protect freedom of speech with our show. We will always stand in the goodness of truth and chiropractic. We also believe medical health freedom is essential and family health freedom is essential. We have control over our households and how we feed ourselves and what we put into our body and what we don't put into our body. We also protect the sacred trust, which is BJ Palmer's last words. If you don't know what the sacred trust is, I urge you to go to your favorite search engine right now, pause the show, and go find out what BJ Palmer's last words were and find out what BJ Palmer's sacred trust was. And you'll learn so much more about chiropractic than you ever could have imagined before that point. And then we do support subluxation-based chiropractic. And we also believe in innate intelligence and universal intelligence. We believe that man or woman, the physical, when they get adjusted, it connects them to man or woman, the spiritual. And with that being said, Dr. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, James. I'm looking forward to sharing with everyone.
Yeah, and there's a lot of impact that I just shared in the first 3 minutes. And the reason I do that, Dr. Sarah, is in case somebody doesn't ever sit through the whole episode, they at least know where we stand for. Yes. And they understand like the power behind the message that we create here.
Yeah. Good for people to know. Good for people to follow along with you and what you're doing. It's great.
Oh, yeah. It's a big journey. And we were talking off camera, and over the past 5.5 years, going to year number 6, we've done almost over 1,200 interviews, and you're actually an official 523 of our show. And there's so much reverence I have for the chiropractic profession to continuously carry this torch and swing this hammer. My big ask for anybody that's made it to this part in the interview is just share this. That's your dues. Pay your dues and share this message so more people can understand the power of chiropractic, the truth of chiropractic, and more people can become influenced to practice natural health. And I think that there's so much to be said about just sharing, comment, like, subscribe to our channels. I think honestly, Dr. Shay, I never really got down that path too much, but I've been listening to a guy named Andy Frisella, and his podcast is called Real AF. And I started to realize that that's the economy that we're in. We're in the share economy. That if somebody's like, you know what you should be, Jim? You should be a leader in this profession. You should go, be on politics. I'm like, well, you should do? You should share our message so more people can get influenced with what we're doing here. And that's where we actually get momentum in this world. So off my stage here, it's your turn.
Okay.
Our show really opens up with your story. And if you could just share with our audience today a little bit about your journey through chiropractic. You so eloquently shared this with me. We thought we were live, but we weren't. And you said you could replay the whole message for us. So how did you get into this beautiful profession?
Okay, so there's two visions were happening concurrently at the same time, and it was 1972 when it all started. And my dad had bought us a black and white TV for the family. We thought we were rich, and we could sit down, we could watch, Bandstand in Australia, listen to the news. And on this particular night, I was setting the table, and there was a news flash that came on the TV. So we all went and we sat on the couch and watched it. And in comes this surgeon who was a brain surgeon who just performed the first sort of brain surgery of its kind. And I sat there in awe of this man. Like, how did he get to open up this skull and look inside and then sew the guy back up and the guy's still alive? Like, I wanted to look inside the human body. I wanted to be this brain surgeon. Anyway, the breaking news clip finished, and we got up, and I shouted to my family, I'm going to be a doctor and change people's lives. In that same year, it was the Moscow Olympics, and I saw these athletes walking out into the arena proudly dressed in their country colors. And I looked at them and go, oh my God, how did you, 4 years of training, how did you get here? And you're now going to go and attempt to break records, and the power that comes out of the human body to be the best that you can be in your sport. And so I said to myself, I didn't announce this to the family, I said to myself, I'm going to be an athlete, and I'm going to be wearing the green and gold one day. So when I got to school, it became very, very clear that I probably was not going to be the brain surgeon, even though I come from a lineage of medical doctors scattered in our family from my father's cousins and etc. And I was called at school, dumb and the dunce, and would have been categorized dyslexic, no doubt. But I never lost this vision of I'm going to be a doctor and change people's lives. And I used to go to a lady called Miss Claire, and everyone knew who Miss Claire was. She was the dunce's teacher. And they would call me out in the class, Sarah, it's time for you to go to Miss Claire. And everyone would snigger, and in the background, and I'd get my manila folder. I'd walk out of the classroom, depending on what year I was in at that time at school. But I would always go to this oval, had beautiful green grass. Her little brown door was in the opposite direction. And as soon as I planted my left foot on the green grass, it was always my left foot because I'm left-handed, I would say to myself, I'm going to be a doctor and change people's lives. I'm going to be a doctor and change people's lives, all the way to her brown door, and then all the way back from her brown door back to the classroom. So I got to confirm to myself and affirm to the universe every single day of my school life that I'm going to be a doctor and change people's lives. I had no idea how it was going to work, when it was going to happen, and what kind of doctor I was going to be. I just knew that that's what I was going to be. So it would seem that the first of my visions would come to fruition, which was being this elite athlete. And so I was selected into the Australian rowing team and moved to the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra, where I trained. And upon retiring from that, I was invited to apply to the Australian College of Physical Education, which was in New South Wales. And it was a college that was set up for elite athletes in consideration of their training regime. And even though I had retired, they had offered me a place. So I went and studied there. I finished second in my year, which just goes to show when you're interested in what you want to learn, you'll find a way to learn it. And because I was sitting in that dyslexic kind of environment, I always believe that anybody that is dyslexic has this ability to see a system, so systems became my way to cope, I guess, in the world and see things in a different way. Anyway, so I finished at college, I traveled a bit, and then I opened a gymnasium with a friend in Melbourne, in Victoria, which is my home city in Australia. And I set myself up as a strength and conditioning coach. So I was a strength and conditioning coach of world aerobics champions, that's back in the day, national basketball players, Melbourne Tigers basketball players, and Australian touch football players. And then I found myself back at the AIS lecturing on talent identification. How do these people think? What do they do? But during that time when I was training the elite athletes, they weren't able to visualize. And I was always very, very good at visualizing in color. I could sense things. I could close my eyes and kind of see it all and be in it. But these athletes were finding it hard to do that. So I went to La Trobe University and I applied to go and study psychology. And lo and behold, I got in because I'd done well in my physical education studies. And whilst I was studying psychology and working, that's when chiropractic came into my life. And my husband, my then boyfriend, but now husband, we were working in the gym, and this lady had come up to him and said, "Oh my God," he'd spoken about he had a back challenge, and she said, "Oh, well, you've got to go and see Ken." And we were like, "Okay, we'll go and see Ken." Anyway, so we went off to see Ken. We really didn't know that he was a chiropractor until we got there. We're like, "Oh, right, chiropractor," because when you're in the, the fitness field, it's like chiropractor's there, but everyone loves, other health professionals. So we went and saw Ken, and we were blown away by his level of education, his commitment to helping Randall change, his love of imparting the knowledge of health and where it comes from. And anyway, I left and booked myself an appointment, but they were a husband and wife couple. So I saw his wife, Karen, and Randall saw Ken. And then they became fast friends. We would hang out with them all the time. And they were moving state, and they took a few of us out for dinner. And at that dinner, I said to Ken, and I don't know why it was Ken. It would have been Karen as well, but it was Ken that answered. So I asked the question, well, if you had the chance to study again, where would you go? And he said, oh, well, I would go to Palmer. And we went, Palmer? Like, where's that? And he goes, in Iowa. Iowa? Why would you go there? And he goes, well, that's the the founding college of the profession. And we were like, but why would you go there? And he said, because of the philosophy. We went, philosophy? And he said, yes, the reason why we do what we do. So the next day, I drove myself back out to where I was studying psychology, and I went to the internet. This is back in, the middle 1990s, James. So the internet is very rudimentary. You can't print a page. It's a whole wad. And so I looked up Palmer College of Chiropractic. I pressed print, and this, no doubt, like 30 pages came out, right? So I, got it together. I've gone out to the quadrangle where at La Trobe. I've sat there and I've just started reading, and my eyes have picked up on nerve system, and then they've picked up on brain to body, and then they've picked up on a health definition about optimal well-being and not necessarily the absence of disease or infirmity. And then it's got in the top right-hand corner, click here for the Doctor of Chiropractic program. I get goose pimples now. And so I sat there and I just lost it. I just cried and I cried and I cried, because all of a sudden I felt this 5-year-old go, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. Now you get it. This is the brain surgeon that you're to be. And so I, drove home, tears pouring out of my eyes. Went back home. My husband's already at home. I walk in, I literally whack this wad of paper on the kitchen bench and said, I'm moving to America. What? And I said, yep, we can stay together, but you can come. We can have a long distance relationship, but we all know how that works out. Or we can get divorced. You choose, I'm going. So that's how clear I was. Anyway, a few months later, we were both living in Davenport, Iowa, and we were both enrolled at Palmer College. And the rest, as they say, is history. I've never turned back from that. So it's not a story of I hurt myself in sport and went to the chiropractor and my life was changed. It was more from this 5-year-old who sensed something and already knew something. And it was just a matter of being patient to see where that door would open. And it didn't open until, about 30 years later.
The thing I was mentioning to you on the pre-interview conversation was when you were finishing up at Palmer, I was finishing up at Davenport Central. And I lived in Davenport at the same time you were there. And we were literally, for a few years, a block away from each other, or half a block away from each other. And it's just quite impressive. Actually, my story, I was 16 years old and I graduated high school in 97. So I would have been 1995 would have been the time where I hurt my shoulder playing high school football. And I went over on the recommendation of the athletic trainer at Brady Street Stadium, his name was Mr. Kanoki. And Mr. Kanoki sent me over to Palmer to get x-rays on my shoulder. And I went over to Palmer and they did x-rays on my shoulder, but they asked my mom if they could do x-rays on my spine too, to see if I had any subluxations from the injury. My mom said, sure, go ahead. So from 16 years old, I was getting adjusted over at Palmer while you were over there as a student.
And look at us now here.
I know, full circle.
The circles that bring us back, guys. That's amazing. I love it.
It just took us some time.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Transact Card, Align Life, Neuro Infinity, Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, and the IFCO. Let's hustle.
Patience.
Yeah. And as I was looking through your information that you provided to me, we were getting on the topic of health expression rather than, being sick or sick days, and I think it's really easy for us to be indoctrinated with the language of saying, take a sick day instead of take a health appreciation day, or, you should have a discretionary day for your health and you don't have to tell anybody what's going on.
Yeah.
Just have a day to yourself to recover from whatever it might be. But I love it that you've coined the term health expression. Thanks,
James. That was something, I guess, from when I was little. When I was 7, there was an incident that occurred in the family, well, not in the family, between Dad and I, and he knelt down in front of me and he placed his hand over my heart and he said, Sarah, you have all the answers inside of you. All you have to do is ask the questions and trust your answer. And so for many years, decades now, I've been on this journey of how do we trust more in ourselves, in our body, in where we are in the world, how do we sense that and tap into that? And it wasn't until I was 10 when I coughed a couple of times and my mum took me up to my uncle. And, again, it's that allopathic model because he was the doctor in the family and we'd go to get something to take something away as if it's not meant to be there. And we went back home and I was transported back to that 7-year-old of where my dad put his hand on my heart as my mum was pushing the tablet across the kitchen bench. And I looked at her and I went, no, thanks. I'm not having that. And it marked a significant day in my life that from that day forward, I just didn't do medications. I rarely told my family of a sickness I may have encountered at that time. And at the same time that I said no, there was a new girl that started at school, and her mum was a nurse, but she seemed to be a nurse of a different kind. So I would open their fridge at her place and things would rattle, but they weren't medications like they were at ours. They were like vitamin C and vitamin B. And so I would sit for hours with her mum chatting about health, like, why do you have that and what's that? And so I learned this whole alternative way of looking at health. So as a home educating family, our kids are all born at home, the last of whom was breech. They're non-medicated, prescribed, over-the-counter, or scheduled, zip, zero, naught, nothing. And so when we were bringing kids into the world, I said, well, if we've got all of this part sewn up, we need to have the language sewn up as well. So I don't want my child, given that the first 7 years of life are about the physical body, and they're going to create lots of health challenges as they go through life. I don't want to keep using that word for the first 7 years of their life of you're sick, you're sick, you're sick. That just doesn't make sense. So I said to Randall, we're just going to call it a health expression. And it's a shown condition of expressing health. And all it is that we have the dimmer switches on, but your body is always wanting to create health. And you get those little messages, those whispers that tell you that something's amiss or something's changing in the body, and therefore be alerted to it. So if I give you an example, we always educate our kids from the physical, the chemical, and the emotional. And Anna, when he was about 5 years old, we were moving to New Zealand, to Waiheke Island, to live and set up, leave practice in Queensland, but set up practice in New Zealand. And he had created a health expression, and I could hear him writhing in his bedroom. And I said to Randall, my husband, I'm just going to go and check on Annam. So I went and checked on Annam, and I knelt down beside him and I said, so Annam, what's going on? And he goes, well, clearly I've created a health expression. And I was like, good job, buddy. Well, what's the health expression about? Remember, it's always questions. What's the health expression about? I don't know. Yes, you do. What's it about? Physical, chemical, or emotional? And he said, well, it's physical. I'm like, good job, buddy. Health expression, physical body. What's the physical about? And he was like, I don't know. And I said, well, if we just sit quietly, you will know. And then he said, well, you know, the skate park you take me to, because we'd go out skate parking each day with home education because we could do whatever we wanted. And I said, yes. And he said, you know, the ramp in the middle? And I said, yes. And he said, well, you know, I haven't been able to get down it. And I said, yes. And he goes, well, I think I'm going to grow in my strength and I'm going to be able to get down the ramp. And I put my hand on his forearm and squeezed a little more, much like my dad had placed over my heart. And I said, do you think or do you know? And he said, I know. I said, great job, buddy. Health expression, physical body. You know you're going to grow in your strength. And within 2 days, I adjusted him and he went back to sleep. And within 2 days, he was down the ramp. So how do we empower, the children that are coming through, or even as adults even are now connecting with this, that we are creating health expressions physically, chemically, and emotionally in all 7 areas of our life in order for us to have a different and changing experience. And I think when we come from that one, well, not I think, I know when we come from that angle, it's amazing what we can do. So yes, I think that's probably one of my unique aspects that I offer the chiropractic profession, is this love of etymology and the love of words and how we can look at words and break them down. So for instance, James, if we looked inside the body, we'd go through a hierarchy, right? So we'd go from systems to organs to tissues to cells to organelles to molecules to atoms to subatomic particles to vibrations to energy, and then we will get to light. And light, we can break it down into a positive and negative, right? So we're always going to have, you can't have health without disease, and you can't have disease without health. There is always going to be that aspect of it. And when we look at the word chiropractic, we know that from D.D. Palmer means done by hands, but if you look at the 3 letters of chiropractic, it actually is chi, which is energy. So if we look at that within the system of the body and the hierarchy of the body, we realize that it is all, the essence of life is movement and energy. And we are a bundle of that. And our hands get to impact the energy that is circulating through someone for them to be able to have a different and changing experience. And I think that's gold.
It's the opener We believe in subluxation-based chiropractic, done by hand. And if somebody has a sub, it's less light, luxation, expression. When somebody has a subluxation, it's less light expression. And if chiropractic is dealing with the chi and removes the interference and corrects the vertebral subluxation, now the chiropractor is applying a force done by hand to the vertebral column and removes the interference. And philosophically, the reason Dr. Ken said, I wanted to go to Palmer, I would go back to Palmer, is because the philosophy is just like you were teaching your boy. The body needs nothing extra in it. It simply needs no interference. Once the interference is clear, the light source is revived, and the body has all the element within it now to heal. And I think that that's a part where we have to understand, like, allopathy has a place for like infirmary. And when somebody has an entrenched illness, obviously there's a reason that hospitals are like one of the biggest markets in every major city. It's because people believe in modern medicine. But if you think about like the health grade and the health scores of our nation over here in America, at least, I can't speak for Australia or New Zealand, but we're failing miserably. We're ranked 35. And if you lined up every American, we take, I believe it's 15 times more medication than the next 9 nations behind us. It would take the next 9 nations to line up to take the amount of medication, like you said, the tablet. It would take the next 9 nations combined to take the amount of tablets that the American culture takes, but yet we grade as a score as 35th healthiest in the world of industrialized nations. So we're actually really failing because we are subluxated. Our health market's subluxated. The culture that perpetuates that market is subluxated. And if they just knew how great their body could feel, if they would get a chiropractic adjustment from the day that they were born to the last day of their breath, they could express life the way they were supposed to optimally. And then our systems would self-correct and it would course correct, and it wouldn't be about money. It would be about quality of life, raising healthy families, not a pill, a potion, or a lotion. It would be about total life expression, expressing life. And I think that that's what you've summarized with that one conversation with your boy. And now we come to this realization that we don't need anything extra in our bodies. We simply need no interference. And when you were studying that wad of paper that you smacked down on the counter, that's what lit you on fire. You said what lit me on fire was the nervous system was connected to all the functionality of the organ system, was all connected to the functionality of the athletic performance. And when you can look at somebody from a very specific level and say, okay, where's there misalignment in your spine? Now we can practice chiropractic. And I think that that's the most vital thing that anybody could ever experience. And you wrote a book called The Vital Truth. And I think that that's really important. And there's a lot of proof in that. There's a lot of proof in vitalism. And at that juncture, I would really like to talk about, I know we're well into our interview here, but talk a little bit about the books that you've written and how people, I guess, why did you write the books?
We spoke a little bit about that, didn't we, off air? So The Vital Truth, this one, I can show people that one. That one, I think that was written out of spite. Yeah, I know that sounds really funny, but it's now, I mean, it's sold in over 34 countries around the world. It won a non-literary award, a non-fiction award, literary award. And I wrote it to prove to myself that I could write, if I'm completely honest, because I had this dumb dunce and dyslexic label placed on me for so long that I wanted to prove that no, I actually can write and I can express and I am good at that. And it was one of those, it was almost, I don't want to sound cliched, James, like it was a channeled book. No, I mean, there was obviously structure to it and things that I put, but I wanted people to know about stories. So there was about 13 different stories that are in the book of people who've had their lives change as a result of having chiropractic. And only 3 or 4 days ago, I got an email from someone who said, I've just read your book. I used to go to a chiropractor and I thought XYZ about the chiropractor, but now reading your book, I realized I want to have regular care for myself and my son. So, I get messages like that all the time, and that's what's so fantastic. And the second book, the Health Illusion, Is It Killing You, was a book that was written after our nanny in 2010. We had a nanny in our life, and she had called child services on us, and that threw us into the system. And it took 8 weeks to close that case. During that time, I wrote and wrote and wrote. And because of like we were saying earlier off air, my dyslexic mind always looks at systems. What's the system in there? That's why I did so well in physical education and chiropractic, because they're systems orientated. And that's when I designed a third health approach. So I looked at this allopathic approach, and then I looked at the alternative health approach, because the alternative approach, remember, that was when I was from like 10 until my mid kind of 20s. And then I went into chiropractic. But as I was looking and researching and understanding the allopathic approach and the alternative approach, I found a whole lot of information that didn't fit in either of those two approaches. So, for instance, the word adjustment and the word treatment. And so I designed this whole other approach, health approach, and I wanted an A, because I want it to be allopathic, alternative. What's the next A that I can use so that parents would be able to understand it, and even the profession would be able to understand it? And so I chose the word alternate. Now, because I love etymology and the breaking down of words, I looked at allopathic. Well, what does pathic mean? And when you look up etymology, it means remaining passive. And that's exactly what we do. We go to someone to get something, to take something away. Invariably, that's a treatment. When you break down the word and etymology of treatment, treat means to deal with, and ment means mind. So I'm just going to deal with your mind and create this illusion that is now saying that it's not there anymore. And in fact, when we look at the word illusion, it's a condition of keeping you ill, if you look at the word backwards. So then I looked at the alternative approach, and native, when I ask people that around the world, lots of people say it means organic and it means, natural, and it actually means offering a choice. So in aspirin, in the allopathic approach, you'll get willow bark in the alternative approach. So the alternative health approach is almost exactly the same, minus the prescription of drugs and surgery, as it is with the allopathic approach. You're just offering something different. But everything else, it really differs on 2 other things as well. Suggestions rather than a diagnosis is made, and you get more natural remedies rather than drugs. And time is given to you. If something is untoward within your body, the allopathic approach is like, you've got to do something now, or it's irresponsible. And whereas the alternative health approach is saying, we'll give you time to go and consider what your options are. And then when I looked at the third health approach, which I had kind of pieced together, then the word nate means inborn. So here we then have this triangle, right? So we've got the allopathic and the alternative, and then the alternate. And health is in the middle. And the more that you can empower yourself by understanding what each of these 3 different health approaches are, then you become like a health slider. You can slip where you need to slip in order to, constantly create the changes within your body and the adaptation to your life. But at the moment, if we turn the triangle, then allopathic is sitting at the top. And it's much like the nutritional pyramid, right? It's the standard American diet, which is the acronym for a SAD diet. And it's the same over here in the health professionals. We have too many people that are addicted to, the drugs and the surgery. And as a result of that, they're missing these opportunities to educate themselves on what health really is. And that goes back to the hijacking of the curriculum system in education, the way things are done on TV, the way things are force-fed, all the propaganda, etc., that goes with that. But the more that we can empower people within this triangle and really understanding what each of those health approaches do and don't do, then the more empowered people are to make healthy decisions for themselves and their family going forward. So I probably left maybe some viewers hanging on what the difference is with treatment and adjustment. If I can just share this piece. So treatment is the word that is commonly used in the alternative and the allopathic approach, whereas chiropractic, and I get that subluxation is important to us. I really do. I'm the first one to raise my hand and go, yes. However, I think a word that sits above subluxation, and I'm probably putting my head above the pulpit or I'm about to be noosed, is the word adjustment. Now, here's why. When you break down the word adjustment, you get add means move to, just means center, and ment means mind. The adjustment moves the mind back to center. So we have this alignment once again with the thoughts and with the physiology of the body. And as a result of that, that's when we can start to change in our views. Because one of the first things that I've noticed, James, with people in practice is that when you start with someone, one of the first things that they say, and it's usually within the first few weeks, is, I don't know what's going on, but I'm just thinking clearer. Things are clearer. And it's designed that way because once we get the mind realigned, we are then able to go through the hierarchy of the body and have that peel away the layers. So I think, I don't know where I was going with that one, but yeah, I'll stop there.
Well, it takes me back, because the adjustment is such a fundamental part of the profession, for the lexicon, for the languaging. And it really brings me back to the center of the word alignment. And when I first started doing chiropractic marketing, I would meet people out in the public because I did 600 spinal screenings in 2.5 years. And it was kind of like off-putting to me that people would tell me, oh, I went and got my alignment today. Or, yeah, it's been a while since I've had an alignment. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm not going to take people to task on this thing about saying it's an alignment, but it sounds better. Like it sounds better to be aligned than to be adjusted. And, I think that there's a lot that we can still learn. And I still think that we're really early in the profession, but that's why I stand on the tenets that I stand on when we open the show up. We need to protect the sacred trust. We need to guard it well. We need to protect freedom of speech in order to do so. And there's an old saying that when you point one finger, you got 3 pointing back at you. And just when we think we're right, I think we need to be a little bit more sensitive to understanding that a lot of times we're wrong. So that's how we make advancements in the future of chiropractic. And I think that a lot of times we let our egos jump into the way and say that we're right, our system's the best, our technique's the best, our school's the best, our coaching group's the best, where how can we all be the best when the profession is the best? And I think that that's where we need to switch our reverence to and understand that chiropractic as a profession can have a long future ahead of us if we drop the ego out of it. And earlier talking about making sense of things to people through our language skills. And I've been mentoring a young man recently, and I asked him actually yesterday, he was sharing some of his plight with me. And I said, does that belong to you or does that belong to someone else? And he said, someone else. I said, perfect. So a lot of times we want to own the problem for someone else, where really we should just set it down and go about making the profession stronger by creating more unity with the diversity that's included in this profession. And I would recommend everybody that's watched up to this point, reach out to 5 chiropractors in your local community, invite them out for a meal, get to know them, make the profession stronger, make some friends, support the chiropractor community, and let them know that we're all more alike than we are different. Dr. Sarah,
Yeah.
you're episode 523 of the Chiro Hustle podcast.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for being a part of this message with us today. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to share with our audience before we call it a day?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit in a short time. So I'm quite happy to let that digest with the audience and see, if anything percolates, they can always reach out to me directly or via you.
So if people do want to reach out to you directly, where can we send them to?
The website would be best. So that would be Vital-Wellbeing, one word. And our Facebook page, which is @1 Vital Wellbeing, or Instagram @1 Vital Wellbeing, or they can email on hello@vital-wellbeing.com.
Well, Dr. Sarah, thank you for the assets. Thank you for the connection. Thank you for everything that you're doing to support the future of chiropractic today and for so many people. Just want to let you know that you are acknowledged, you are appreciated, and thank you for being on our show today.
Thanks, James. And thank you for all that you do and give to the profession. We are, so blessed to have someone like you in our corner and holding the torch for us. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate the acknowledgement too. And I will close out as I typically do by telling everyone out there, you're just one story away. Keep hustling. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you, Dr. Sarah.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.